Welcome everyone, Questini here with a discussion about the Skaven in Total War Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires with the community tier list. You guys voted for the placements on this list, and I'm just gonna go over their Legendary Lords and the results of it. In last spot, and most likely at like 1 or 2%, because Queek got like 6%, Skrolk got 2%, and then I did a second poll with Queek, Skrolk, and Tretch came in last in that poll. So 1% or even 0% is Tretch Craventail. Probably the most useless Legendary Lord in the entire freaking game. His faction effects give him Scurry Away that has a damage resistance effect on it if leadership is wavering or lower. Sounds nice, except it's pointless because with Skaven, you want to kill your enemies from range. And if you're not capable of killing your enemies from range, and your leadership is dropping, having 10% ward save is probably not going to count all that much. It certainly doesn't. You do get encouraged for Storm Vermin units, so the poor leadership of Skaven can be better, but really, that doesn't really matter, nor does the Storm Vermin benefit of additional armor and base weapon damage count all that much. Nor does it for Clan Rats. To explain why, Storm Vermin and Clan Rats are two of the worst units that you can use in a Skaven campaign. Obviously, Skaven slaves are pretty bad as well, of course, but when you consider Clan Rats as a unit, they're low leadership, low armor, low damage, low everything, so why the hell would you use them when there's significantly better units that you can get fairly quickly? Like Night Runners, which are a significantly better unit in every single way possible. Better in melee, more survivable. Even if they have lower armor, they do have physical resistance, which makes up for it. And they also have Vanguard deployment, which is actually going to be important in a second. And then you gotta talk about Storm Vermin. Well, here's the thing about Storm Vermin. They're not a bad unit. They're quite a durable unit. But the problem is they're not really effective cost-wise. Again, there are better units you can get if you're playing a Skaven campaign, if you own the DLC. Even if you don't own the DLC, I would say like going for Night Runners and Gutter Runners is genuinely the better choice. But if you do own the DLC, specifically Clan Eshin, you can get Warp Grinders, which are cheaper, generally quite a durable unit, even if not quite as durable as these guys, and have some really sweet abilities and Vanguard deployment. Plus, they also have Wall Breaker. While they may take more damage in battle than Storm Vermin from my personal experience, if I have to choose between any kind of unit with a Skaven army, yeah, I'm gonna go for Warp Grinders. Or if I want melee units, there's always Rat Ogres, which are genuinely far better as a unit than the fricking Storm Vermin. Or you can go for Plague Monks if you want to, really. Like, genuinely, there is almost no reason in any Skaven campaign, even this one, which is supposed to be focused on Storm Vermin, to actually recruit them. Then, as a final faction effect, you do get benefit when you declare war on a faction. This is basically permanent because it does stack in duration for more wars. So over here, like by turn 6, I have 13 turns. So this is like a permanent buff. But how useful is it, really? Let's consider this. You get Vanguard deployment for all units when plenty of Skaven units have already Vanguard deployment. If you want to make an army for Vanguard deployment as Skaven, you have plenty of options already, so not quite as useful. It's one thing for Vampire Counts under Vlad to have this for Skaven. Like, even with a full melee army, doesn't quite matter as much. Menace from below, pretty meaningless, gotta say it. Enemy reinforcement time, okay, can be useful, very situational though. Ambush success chance, now this is an exceptionally useful benefit because Skaven do have the stock stance, which has a lower ambush success chance. So, increasing the ambush success is certainly beneficial, in theory, until you realize that you can get armies led by Master Assassins that can get plus 15% nullify that downside. I mean, besides, if you want to play the ambush success campaign, Clan Eshin right there, so it's like just a bunch of benefits cobbled together that don't really matter as much as they should. Tretch himself does have devastating flanker for all units in his army. They're really trying to push that melee build in his army because they designed this campaign under the idea that it's a free campaign, so you're not going to have DLC, but it's like, even if you don't have DLC, there's better priorities for Skaven. As I said, Night Runners, God Runners, Plague Monks, Plague Claw Catapults, like many options available for Skaven. So it is a useful benefit if you want to use flankers, but kind of not as good. You do get Tretch Raiders and Storm Vermin Charge, kind of useful, but an ambush success chance and defense chance, as well as campaign movement range after winning a battle. But again, like, these are lord effects they can gain anyway by confederating Tretch. Like, it's genuinely better to play Queek, to play Throt. If you want to play a campaign in this area, there's other options, better options than this guy. Like, seriously, play Queek. It's a much better campaign than this bloody rat. And it's kind of like a joke campaign. I've played this campaign. Like, in fact, I did a poll a while ago asking people which campaign to play, and people overwhelmingly voted Tretch. It wasn't as horrible as I think people make it out to be. Skaven are still a very, very powerful race. Let's not deny that. And he does have certainly some benefits, but out of the Skaven campaigns, this is the most worthless. Oh, you get Life is Cheap, which gives you armor and upkeep benefit for slaves. That is so useless. I wasted the point in this, I admit. Like, this was just to, like, realize just how pointless his skill line is, because casualty replenishment, all good, except you have casualty replenishment. Heroes 8 can increase capacity at tier freaking 2, and you start with 1 in this campaign. Upkeep for Skaven slaves, what? Are Skaven slaves expensive units? I don't think so. And, like, really, this is the thing. It's one thing to have an upkeep benefit for units that actually cost something, but Skaven slaves are freaking cheap if you want to. I almost never bother with Skaven slaves in any campaign. Armor, yeah, that's pretty good if you want to use Skaven slaves, but thing about that, let me just cancel this particular building over here. Consider a warlord, right? Right, consider he has Life is Cheap as well. But he also has other benefits in consideration, like he can get Ravenous Expansion, for instance. It is a choice that Tretch doesn't have. Yes, I'm quite serious. I think a warlord, Skaven lord, is actually more useful because it gives you income from provincial capital settlement buildings, faction wine and its stacks, and gives you growth that does stack as well. So between these two, I think I would rather use a warlord. Also, it has a brute horror. I mean, Tretch is fairly durable in battle, but he doesn't have a mount. This guy gets a freaking brute horror if you own the DLC. Like, yeah, I'm gonna go with the Skaven warlord being a better lord choice to lead an army than Tretch. I mean, I'll certainly use Tretch if I confederated him. Unlike Snikch, who is genuinely a downside, but there's not much difference that much, and there's some benefits with the freaking warlord as well to use in terms of leading a freaking army. Jeez, that is a sad state of affairs for a legendary lord. In 5th position, it is Lord Skrolk, and I can certainly understand this one at the very least. Although he does have some fairly substantial plague benefits, being able to use the pestilence scheme, blowing up all his enemies, and getting quite significant benefits from that. He does have a chance of increasing plague spreading, plagues bolster forces, as well as getting a construction cost, as well as a right cooldown for the pestilence scheme, which is actually quite useful because, yeah, the cooldown on that is fairly significant. On top of that, he gets an upkeep benefit for the plague monks, and crucially, plague claws. Like, I'm not particularly fond of plague monks personally, but you can get a lot of plague priests if you want to in a Skaven campaign, in any Skaven campaign. As well as getting Plague Priest recruitment in all provinces. Again, like just spamming more heroes than all other Skaven, that is pretty damn substantial. You do reduce control in enemy provinces, as well as getting diplomatic relations with all Skaven factions. Skrolk isn't the most exciting, but this campaign at least works, which is not something I can say as much as about Tretch. It is a pretty brutal early game, just because Tenuan so hard counters Skaven so badly, but if you overcome that, it's a pretty easy ride. I guess it just feels like a boring campaign and an interesting campaign for Skaven to deal with lizardmen, and yeah, Lustria is not a fun zone on the campaign map at all. Even though you have the best campaign in Lustria, because you can use underways, so you don't have to worry about the insane travel times that you have to deal with in Lustria. So that is pretty beneficial. And on top of that, you actually get trading partners from the very beginning, because you have one minor Skaven faction over here right next to you. You actually have two minor Skaven factions, but one of them is going to be wiped by Tenuin on turn 1. It was funny when you could prevent that from happening, because Tenuin would have a battle that he would have to deal with. Now he just has siege battle to deal with, so he'll always win against this particular settlement. Still, even though it's a harsh start, at least it works as a campaign. So I think a lot of people don't try it out because they hate Lustria, and for good bloody reason on that subject. But to everyone watching this, I would recommend playing this campaign a lot, at least once. It's actually a lot more fun than you might think. I wouldn't say the same about freaking Tretch. Then there is Queek in 4th position. For me, this is my second favorite Skaven campaign. Not because I don't think that some other legendary lords aren't better than Queek, they are, but their starting situation, the campaign that they have to deal with, can be miserable in quite a few ways. But I do understand why Queek, who is just the generic lord of the Skaven, does get rated lower. Though of the campaigns that you do have access for free without buying DLC, this is genuinely the best campaign by far. Unlike Tretch, you get a 25% upkeep benefit for Storm Vermin and Clan Rats, so you actually have more reason to use them in this campaign, because having them more powerful is one thing. They're still expensive, and they do take time to recruit, Storm Vermin that is. Having them cheaper, pretty substantial. Also, food costs minus 35% for additional uses of Menace from below, and can purchase up to 5 additional levels of Menace from below each battle. This is a much better benefit than freaking Tretch. Like, anything that Tretch can do, Queek can do better. Essentially, you also get chieftains. You can recruit chieftains. You start with 1, you can have up to 3 from the very, very start of your campaign. Even though the structure you start with, the Clan Morse headquarters, doesn't actually increase capacity. You can get 4 the moment you get this to tier 2. Though I would probably recommend getting the Hidden Lair first and foremost, just a personal perspective, and turning Caraca's Gall into a tier 3 settlement using all your food for that. But yeah, having that extra hero capacity for chieftains is pretty damn useful. On top of that, he's actually really good at dueling lords, because he is a monster in combat and melee combat. He's the best fighter in terms of melee combat, or in combat in general, of the Skaven legendary lords. He also gets extra ability uses for Menace from below, and gets a benefit fighting greenskins and dwarves, which you certainly will take advantage of. You do get minus loyalty for new recruits, but you do get a leadership benefit. You get frenzy. You do get loyalty for warlord recruits, but lose loyalty for Greyseers. That's not really significant either way. I personally don't care much for either warlords or Greyseers. I prefer, if I'm leading an army, I'm going to get a warlock master or master engineer. That is my personal perspective. But hey, if you want to use warlords with cheap clan rats, that is something that is available. You can also get... You also have Lipe is very cheap skill, all the same. Which, yeah, as I stated, is not particularly great skill. But you do get the Storm Vermin recruitment duration benefit. Only for Queek, but hey, you want to lead the Storm Vermin army? I'll say it. Queek is better at it. Seriously, I'm not even freaking joking on this. He's better. He gets them higher rank, he recruits them faster, he has them cheaper, and then he gets control and ambush success chance plus 15%. Also, he has some pretty good items over here, actually. Like, in Warhammer 2, before the advent of things like Tarax or Matless Darkblade, the hero you would fear would, the lord you would fear would either be Grimgore, but Greenskins were in a troubled spot before their rework. But really, I would personally fear Queek. Like, right now I don't, but that's because we fear Grimgore a lot more, or Scarbrand a lot more. But still, Queek is not something to sneeze at. He's a pretty perfectly good, functional campaign. He's just not as exciting as a Legendary Lord in terms of his design as some of the others are. But if you don't want to buy Skaven DLC but want to play a campaign, this is the best one out there. In third position is Throt the Unclean, which came out in Twisted Twilight which is one of the best DLCs in general for the game. Now, Throt, he gets HP for all characters, mountain attrition, and has access to the Flesh Lab. And the nice thing about Throt is that you really have an enormous level of unit customization. And this is really what kind of makes Tretch so meaningless, because if you want powerful storm vermin, guess what? This is the campaign where you can get them. Or you can get powerful monsters as well. Powerful ranged units, powerful monsters. The only thing you can't really buff are artillery units. And that's about it. You have the most individual unit customization of any campaign in the game. And when we're looking at Throt, he does have an upkeep benefit for Skaven monsters. He gets regeneration. He gets the ability Beast Pack, which summons rat ogres. He gets Master Controller. He gets armor for monsters. And then he gets HP, Growth Juice, which is his unique faction resource, more Growth Juice, Leadership, Perfect Vigor, various benefits for monsters, as well as buffing that Ogre Summon, as well as getting Ward Save. So I would say Throt, in terms of his campaign effects, campaign mechanics, lord skills, is a really good lord. The problem is he starts with level 1 Hell Pit in Kislev, and I think that's all I need to say on this subject. Kislev sucks. Like, as an area, in terms of how it's designed, it's genuinely one of the worst areas in the game. By far, honestly. Like, as much as I complain about Lustria is a really bad area because it's so freaking large and there's quite a few campaigns. But Kislev, even though it's much smaller, and you may not necessarily count it as its own area because you do have the Empire right next to it, as well as Norska, but Kislev, like, just the provinces of Kislev, the cities of Kislev, they're not really conducive for a good Skaven campaign. It is better after Shadows of Change because we do have Troll Country, Eastern Oblast, and Southern Oblast now having proper provincial capitals, so you can really get a lot of value from this as Skaven, but having to fight Katrin, Kastalten, and Malachi early on certainly is off-putting, to say the least, when you just start with Tier 1 capital. Again, you can make it work, it's not really a problem from that perspective, but yeah, I understand why this campaign doesn't have quite the same appeal. And there's just better campaigns out there. Like, I agree with this ranking in quite a few ways. I would have rated Queek higher than this and something else lower, but I understand why people chose this. Cool character, cool DLC, well worth the price, but just not as great as some other stuff. And number 2 is Deathmaster Snikch of the Skaven. For me personally, he is number 1 by far because he has a great campaign. He is in one of the best campaign areas in the entire game, and that is, of course, Grand Cafe itself, which has a great variety in terms of terrain, in terms of factions that you fight, so it is really fun from that perspective. You don't have to deal with the loyalty mechanic. Your Night Runners and Gut Runners have armor-piercing projectiles over there, so most of their damage is going to be done with armor-piercing at range. So that is very significant. On top of that, you also have the shadowing dealings over here, be it Ashen Actions or Client Contracts. You want to eliminate Grimgor so you don't have to deal with and plunge his entire faction rebellion? You can do so over here. It can trivialize certainly some factions, though the cooldown on some of this stuff is absolutely very long. Considering, however, how extremely powerful some of these things are, yeah, I can understand it. To a certain degree, though, I think like 50 turns can be quite absurd. I would certainly reduce some of the cooldowns, or give us the ability of reducing the cooldowns on some of these schemes. What is a bit annoying you do have to send Snikch every once in a while to go deal with this, which certainly can be pretty annoying to deal with, but still a significant level of power that is available for Snikch. On top of that, he has an ambush success chance, concealment bombs for himself, melee attack for embedded heroes. You can make hero doom stacks work quite well. Further ambush success chance, so he ends up with 45% ambush success chance for himself, for his own army. Campaign movement range, charge bonus, strider, speed for infantry unit, concealment bombs for Night Runners and Gutter Runner units, upkeep, hero and lord recruit rank +3, melee benefits, as well as reducing enemy control and leadership, and ensuring that you take less damage from attrition, or increase the amount of attrition taken by the defender in a siege. So he's really, really good from a lot of these perspectives. He's the ninja character of the Skaven. And what I really like about this campaign, personally, is that you start in a good province, you have a lot of potential right from the very get-go. Over here, you're really good at controlling all of Cathaya's territory, actually better than the Cathayan factions themselves, so there's a huge level of potential in this campaign. I understand it can get a bit stale, but another thing I want to point out as a kind of benefit here, these clan contracts will also give you vision on the major factions of the Skaven. Minus Tretch, but who cares about him, really? Who really cares about him? But be it Ikit Claw, Throt, Queek, Skrolk, you can gain vision, and if you play your cards right diplomatically, you can get confederations with these major factions. It certainly gives you an edge in being able to achieve that confederation. The one downside here in this campaign is you do have the revitalizing scheme. You're missing the plague action, which is not really important unless you're playing Clan Pestilent. The one downside, though, is you're missing the ability of creating a Skaven undercity with an engineer lab, so you will have less engineers in this campaign than other Skaven campaigns. But it will amount to, in a real campaign, to like 1 or 2 engineers, really, in the campaign, though it is annoying having to get to tier 5 to get more engineer capacity in Skaven campaigns. But then again, considering Skaven mechanics in terms of being able to get instantly settlements to instant tier 5, it's not quite as significant as it is in other factions, looking at Yolosapien with respect to that. So great campaign, not quite perfect, missing some things compared to other factions, and recruiting non-Eshin units is absolutely ridiculously expensive in this particular campaign compared to other factions, unless you do a lot of those clan contracts. So if we look over here to shadowy dealings, you can see that we can reduce the upkeep and even get an upkeep benefit or recruitment benefit for those kind of units if we do it. To be perfectly honest, not necessarily a lot of them do matter, except like, yeah, Clan Scryer and Plague Laws. Everything else you can do without. So you do have a lot of units that are actually available in this campaign. And on top of that, you can actually get Night Runner, the Night Runner building at tier 1, which means you can construct this entire building chain in a minor settlement and get a lot of assassins, plague priests, and Eshin sorcerers in this campaign, which is pretty damn substantial, all things considered. And finally, at number 1, it is, to no one's surprise, Ikit Claw. The most beloved campaign of the Skaven, and one of the most beloved campaigns in the entire freaking game. Nuclear-powered rats do tend to leave an impression on people, and yes, being able to build strategic nuclear weapons in both campaign and battle use is certainly very significant as a campaign mechanic. Hell of a campaign mechanic. I mean, the trailer is iconic, the character is iconic, the unit you get through the DLC are iconic, Rattling Gunners and Giselles. There's very little that can go wrong with this campaign, except the starting positions. Skaven Blight, as well as the Stalia and Tylea, are certainly not great. Maybe they'll change it for the Dogs of War DLC. I guess we shall have to wait and see on that. But it's not really a great starting position, and it makes it, from my perspective, less of an interesting campaign to play from that. Which is a shame, because the race is really good, the character is really good, it's just like really that starting position. I'd firmly recommend playing Ikit Claw in the Old World mod, because he is much better there in that particular campaign, because yeah, Skaven Blight actually gets a full province there. You do get upkeep benefits and various benefits for these units, as well as significant upgrades over here through the Forbidden Workshop. Don't forget to scroll down to upgrade the Poisoned Wind Mortars and Globadiers, as well as Bombardiers. Yeah, what can I say? There's a lot of power over here. Witness me, damage resistance over here for Warp Grinders, or rather, allies in range. Regeneration for Warp Grinders, expendable for Warp Grinders, which are a tier 2 unit. Armor for flamethrowers, benefits for your mortars, as well as bombardiers. And yeah, significant benefits for Doom Flayers, Doom Wheels, and of course even upgrading the Doom Rockets, of which you start with one. And on top of that, you also get even more benefits over here by upgrading the lab in a lot of ways, including quite a bit of money in this campaign, as well as unique units that are separate from the Regiment's Renown that you have access to. in a normal campaign. It's not necessarily a whole lot of units, it's just 5, but damn, having 5 extra quote-unquote regiments renowned is pretty significant. So those are the Skaven campaigns. This is what you guys voted for in this particular order. Well, let me know what you guys think. And stay tuned for more. Next up, we'll talk about the demons.